Hi, and welcome to Newswire LA. I'm your host, Chin Thomasangsi. Recently, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority opened the Metro Expo line. The Metro Expo line runs from downtown Los Angeles to just inside of the Culver City limits. It's been 50 years since light rail has crossed the city of Los Angeles, and everyone involved is proud to have this new rail system. But these rail systems have not come without controversy. In fact, one future rail line is stirring up its own controversy even before the first shovel of dirt is moved. The Crenshaw Light Rail Line has spawned a group called the Crenshaw Subway Coalition. The coalition is headed by Damien Goodmon, and the group has at least two major points that they need to see satisfied before they can get happy about having this line. Today we're going to take you inside of that group and show you what they're talking about. Before we turn you over to Newswire LA's Jamie Wright, let's introduce you to the Crenshaw Light Rail Line. The image you're looking at comes from the recent opening of the MTA's Metro Expo line. This will serve as a template for what's to come in the Crenshaw corridor. Phase 1 of the Crenshaw Light Rail Line will run from Exposition Boulevard, where it intersects with the Expo line, continue down through the Crenshaw district, heading south into the city of Inglewood. The line will eventually terminate just north of Los Angeles International Airport. This close-up of the Crenshaw corridor is the territory the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, headed by Damien Goodmon, is fighting for. Significant landmarks along this corridor include the West Angeles Cathedral and Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza. Several developments are also in the process, which will be completed over the next few years. Significant areas include Liemert Park, Park Mesa, and Hyde Park.
Jamie Wright standing here with Damien Goodmon, the chair of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition. Damien, can you give us a little information about your background?
The background of myself or the background of the organization?
The background about you personally. I couldn't find much about you online.
I like that. I like people focusing on the movement, not the person. Grew up in Liemert Park, just a few blocks from where the station should be on the Crenshaw Rail Line. And had an opportunity to study in Washington and in Boston. And while in Washington, I saw the importance of rail transit, but rail transit that's built right. So I came back to Los Angeles and started wondering, why don't we have an expansive rail transit system like is seen in Boston and other East Coast towns, and even in San Francisco, and became a transit nerd. No other way of putting it. About 3,000 hours I spent talking to representatives of elected officials, transportation planners, reading environmental impact reports and other studies on rail transit. And from that came the Get LA Moving Plan, an expansive system to drastically add rail to the metro system. And from that came to the Expo line issue, which is being built about a mile and a half from my house, and saw that there were things that were wrong that needed to be corrected, that there were resources that had become available prior to the approval of the project that were passed, subsequent to the approval of the project, that could have gone toward it, and didn't see elected officials going after it. So I began using, the thing I glossed over was my little political background. In 2004, I was on the national staff of Wesley Clark's for President's campaign. He was a Democratic candidate for the nomination for president. And I decided to use the political skills I'd acquired and general understanding of community organizing toward trying to improve the rail projects in my community, both the Expo line and the Crenshaw line, which we're now completely focused on.
It was touched upon earlier, but Goodman's experience with the MTA comes from the fact that in addition to heading the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, he also heads the group Fix the Expo Line.
So obviously there's the Fix the Expo movement, and then there's the Crenshaw Subway movement. The two seem similar, but I'm sure people will be wondering what is the difference and why are they not now one and the same?
Well, we just separated them for the purpose of having, because they go down two corridors, and we wanted to have the board that was going to be making decisions on the Crenshaw line to be people that were in the portions that weren't represented in the Expo line. I mean, Liemert Park, Crenshaw Manor, those are communities that are impacted by both. But then you bring in the Hyde Park community and the Angeles Mesa community. They're not as impacted by the Expo line as the Crenshaw line. So when the time came, excuse me, when the time came in the summer of 2011 where we knew that we were going to have to start raising money significantly to pay for a lawsuit, we said, well, the board that oversees that should be more representative of the community the line's going through. So we separated them. Not a big deal. We're, it's like that small town in the backwoods where the judge is the mayor. Is, we're all working together. I run both organizations, but we've just got more people involved based on the locality.
On the day Newswire LA met Damien and his group, he was working to prepare them for a major event being called the Showdown at the MTA. This event would find him and the members of his group attending the next meeting of the MTA board to present what is called the People's Plan. However, before we can articulate a plan, we have to articulate the problems the group actually has with the Crenshaw Light Rail Line. In no way are they opposed to the idea of having light rail in the community. In fact, they see it as a much-needed benefit. But there are at least 2, maybe 3 issues that they would like to see fixed before the line opens. 1. They are looking for the station at Liemert Park Village to be put back in as part of the overall construction plan. Many people have been led to believe that a Liemert Park station was never part of the original plan. But the coalition explains, in more detail later in this story, that from the very first plan that came up, there was a Liemert Park station. Additionally, they're looking for an African American Heritage Center to be built as part of the project. Secondly, the coalition wants a section of the line currently scheduled to be built above ground at street level to be moved underground. Using the map of Crenshaw, look at this portion, which runs between 48th and 60th Street. The coalition sees this stretch as possibly being the death of the last black business corridor, along with the simple fact that having an above-ground grade creates amazing safety problems when it comes to pedestrians and school children.
So the 2 major issues, optional at Liemert Park Village, street level and Park Mesa Heights. So what are the solutions? It's easy at Liemert Park Village. Every single design of this line until the current one, that is because they've been studying this for 20 years, every single plan they've been having, well, there's been a Liemert Park Village station. It wasn't optional. It was mandatory. It is a headliner. It is a destination station. Other than LAX, it is the major station on this line, and they consider it optional. That's not right. If there are other cultural centers like Little Tokyo, Mariachi Plaza, Alvera Street, if they have stations on the metro system, so should Liemert Park Village. You cannot allow the merchants, these African American businesses and cultural centers, to be passed by as the train rolls by. And the bottom line is, if it takes political money, you spent money on that underground station in Mariachi Plaza. You spent money on that underground station in Alvera Street. You spent money for that elevated station in Chinatown. If you can get off the station at Hollywood and Vine and walk across the street to the Pantages Theater, you should be able to get off the station at Liemert Park Village and walk across the street to the renovated Village Theater. And there's progress on that. We'll talk about it in a little bit. The second solution, like I said, it's underground between Exposition and 48th, and it's underground from 60th to 67th. Just connect the tunnels. I mean, we're saying we might have to get down to just, get the rolling 40s at the pit and just say, no, bro, you're not taking that boring machine out the ground. You got to keep rolling. Keep it rolling. I'm not above it. I'll just say that much. Just keep it rolling. If it's there, if it's going to go to 48th and you're going to start again at 60th, just keep it rolling for those 11 blocks on Crenshaw Boulevard. Because if you don't, we're talking about the destruction of the last black business corridor. And that should give us pause.
Let's go back to Damien and Jamie, who are talking about one of the steps of recourse he and the group are taking as a result of what you've just heard.
All right, let's touch upon the lawsuit. I'm a lawyer, so I've read through the complaint, at least the state one, that was filed by your lawyers in Temecula, and it goes on to discuss a series of causes of action. Actually, it's 200 pages long, this particular complaint. And one of the things that there's a concern about is the failure to disclose certain information, failure to properly evaluate. Can you just give us a little more information on kind of what the train of thought was from your organization's perspective on, coming up with these causes of action? Why this lawsuit? Why the choice of lawyers in Temecula?
Well, Ray Johnson of Johnson and Sedlak is a Goliath slayer. No other way of putting it. When you're going up against an entity like Metro, you need to bring on the best possible lawyer you can. He successfully litigated against Walmart. They've got as expensive a legal team as money will buy.
Sure.
We said from our community standpoint, the biggest trump card we have, the way that we know we will bring them to the table, is if we finally get in an arena where they don't control everything. Before you get before a black robe, before a judge, Metro has all the cards. And Johnson said like they are exceptional environmental law attorneys, and when we were looking for people in firms to represent us in this cause toward preserving the last African-American business corridor, we said we deserve the best possible. And the causes of action, they're numerous. In addition to the environmental violations of the California Environmental Quality Act, there's the violations of California's version of the Civil Rights Act, 11135, where there's discrepancies and discrimination in Metro's processes. So we threw that all in there. We also threw in records requests that had been denied, which were numerous. Simple stuff like we just want the ages of the people who have been killed in the Blue Line accidents. We said no. We want to see the justification you have or the studies that you're not presenting publicly that it led to your decision. They said no. Well, you're not allowed to do that. Bottom line is we're in court because they're breaking the law. And we've got a pretty strong case on three fronts. We've got exceptional attorneys, and the reality is we see the avenue to getting the line the way the community wants it, with it built completely underground on Crenshaw Boulevard and with the station at Liemert Park Village, the African American Cultural Center of Southern California. We see that that'll more likely happen with the responsiveness of elected officials and the contractors. So we're engaging on all three fronts. Legally, we're encouraging people to contact their elected officials, and then we're also engaging the contractors to try and convince them to make this the best possible project they can.
It's important for people to know, this is not the San Francisco trolley. These are 225-ton trains, almost the length of a football field, 270 feet long. They take some time to stop. It's basically a heavy subway running at street level down the middle of Crenshaw Boulevard where Metro opposes. You're looking at these trains coming 35 miles per hour. It's going to take them about 300 feet to stop. But all the signs they put up can be confusing. It's not safe. The trains are too fast, the traffic is too great, and the margin for error is too little. It's not safe at street level.
Which comes to crunch? The Blue Line train and a car collide in downtown Los Angeles this afternoon. The driver is hospitalized.
We have breaking news where a person has been hit by a train. Larry Wellcat.
A fiery train accident involving a Metro Rail Gold Line commuter train this morning. It collided with an SUV on the tracks in Mount Washington. A number of people were hurt.
This is right in downtown Los Angeles. It is a bus versus a Metro Blue Line.
A car crashed into a Blue Line train this morning. Inside the car, 2 people are dead, 2 others critically injured, including a 7-year-old boy. Passengers on the train also are hospitalized.
The Blue Line, it is the deadliest light rail line in the United States.
One of the things I want to touch upon is the engaging the community, the politicians, and sort of politics as usual. One of the things that I think is very important is to discuss the fact that the mayor does have 4 votes on the NTA board, and he opposed the amendment put forth by County Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas. And he kind of came into office on a black-brown coalition. And I kind of want to know what your thoughts are now that this is an issue and this sort of is the last sort of black frontier in terms of business. I mean, what are your thoughts on the fact that he came in on a black-brown coalition, but it seems that this is one of the sticking points that the community seems to keep saying, you're not fulfilling your promises, and here's yet another example.
Well, 2 points. I guess the first is betrayal is the ultimate sin. And the African American community has stood by the mayor in his most unfortunate of times. And it was extremely disappointing, and I think a lot of people took it personally when he was the only elected representative of South Los Angeles not to be for the amendment that would have taken care of both the station and the tunnel issue, would have added them both to the project. There was the money there. But the reality is black, brown, the greatest color that exists is green. And there are interest groups that are far more powerful than, I guess you would say, most African American representatives in the African American business community, to which I think the mayor has greater deference to. And so I would say I'm disappointed, but I'm optimistic, call me foolish, that we're going to get the people's motion passed and that he'll be, and his 4 representatives will be voting for it. And my thing is, yeah, there are 13 board members, but I want to get the people who are elected to represent me on board first before I start looking at the other ones. And if you're the only one, and he was the only one, I mean, you had a level of political unity not seen in generations. People who were political adversaries came together to protect the last African-American business corridor and to bring a station at the center of African-American culture in Southern California. And he wasn't with us. And I think the president should know that as he's considering him. And I think we're going to make the delegates of the DNC, as the mayor is the convention chair, we're going to make them know that too. This issue's been loud within South LA, but we're about to make it a lot louder.
Well, thank you for your optimism and your louder than speech, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime.
Stay tuned for more on this exciting story coming up after this station break.